more with our roundtable, former New Jersey Governor Christie, former North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp, our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott, and ABC News Chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega. And I'm going to start with you and go straight to the White House. Cecilia, let's first talk about what Rick Klein covered. Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona announcing her plans to become an independent. The White House downplaying this. No big deal, but come on.
Yeah, sort of like everything's fine. There's nothing to see here. Look, just 2 days before Sinema decides to make this move, the press secretary was at the podium in the briefing room saying that the Georgia win gave them all of this breathing room and they were so happy. Then this announcement comes out and they are basically going on and on effusively about what a key partner she is. Look, the reality is they've got to be nice right now. They really need her. She could end up being a reliable partner for them in the Senate. She could end up being unpredictable, as she has been in the past. I think many behind the scenes would very clearly say that she's been a thorn in their legislative side. But I think the strategy right now, at least in these first few weeks, is to sort of kill her with kindness and keep going with this effusiveness, because they do need her at the end of the day.
And that killing with kindness may go on and on, but it did take some wind out of the sails of the Democrats, especially after Senator Raphael Warnock winning his runoff election in Georgia. What do you think this really means for Democrats?
I mean, it really sucked the air out of the room of the victory party. I feel like the confetti was like still dropping to the floor, and she like came in with this shockwave on Capitol Hill. I mean, two good signs for Democrats here. Number one, she says she's not going to caucus with Republicans. Democrats, quite frankly, don't even see her at caucus meetings as it is right now. It does matter less of where she lunches and more of how she votes, obviously. But also, she asked Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to keep her committee assignments. And that's going to matter big for Democrats because it will allow them to retain the majority on committees, which will allow them to exercise their subpoena power, also push through judicial nominees, which is a big priority for the Biden administration. I do think this happens to be more about 2024 and sort of building up that independent coalition that she's looking for in Arizona.
In Heidi, is it more about 2024? Why do you think she did this?
It's more about Arizona. Nothing, there was so much pearl clutching about this decision of hers, but at the end of the day, it means nothing.
Pearl clutching.
Pearl clutching. Oh my goodness! Look,
you get that right, Chris?
Yeah. You can.
Welcome to our roundtable. Yes.
You know, and when you look at it, at the end of the day, she always was going to vote the way she was going to vote. She always was going to be a pain. And she never caucused with the Democrats. She didn't go to caucus, and she handed them the major majority on committees. So nothing changes in this town. What does change is the politics of Arizona. She is less popular in Arizona than Biden or Trump. And so she's got to find a path forward if she's going to run. That path forward was not in the Democratic caucus. The Democratic Party of Arizona has sanctioned her. You see the animosity there over and over again. She's hoping she can get enough, John McCain Republicans and conservative Democrats to form a coalition and really frighten, I think, the Democratic establishment from backing a Democratic candidate.
And so, Chris, what, beside the obvious, is the GOP silver lining here? How do you look at this?
Oh, look, it just rains on, the Democrats' parade. And it reminds them that even at 51-49, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are still the two most important United States senators out of the 100. And that she wanted to make sure she reminded them, I suspect, that I'm not to be taken for granted. I think that's the best thing. Otherwise, I generally agree with Heidi. I don't think that this is going to be any big deal on Capitol Hill on a day-to-day basis. Everyone's still playing their same role. The rest of the folks in the Democratic caucus are going to play their role. Sinema and Manchin are going to play theirs, and the Republicans are going to play theirs and have their fights. And I don't think the subpoena power thing really is all that big, because in the end, who are they subpoenaing? Most of the time when Congress wants to subpoena someone, whether it's the House or the Senate, it's because the other party is in the White House and they want to subpoena the executive branch. So I don't think that really is going to matter all that much either. So I don't think it's going to change much on Capitol Hill, but it allows us, as Rachel said, as they were celebrating the Raphael Warnock win, for us to say, but remember, you still have Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin.
And on Joe Manchin, Cecilia.
The M word right now.
Yeah, the M word indeed for Democrats, exactly. So what happens with him?
Well,
nothing.
Probably at this point, I think Chris is right. I think his lane stays exactly the same. There was this whole brouhaha last year over whether he would defect, and he adamantly came out and said he wouldn't. And then in the wake of the Georgia win, there were all these headlines that perhaps this loosens his grip on power in the party. And now the headlines are, no, actually, his hold is still the same. I think what you're going to see is that he's going to continue along the same path as he has for years, and that the White House will continue to pull their hair out over him behind the scenes.
And Martha, I've known Joe Manchin for a long time. He was my mentor governor when I got elected in 2009. He's never going to be a Republican in my view. I think Joe Manchin is a Democrat going all the way back to his mom and dad. It's part of who he is. He's a different kind of Democrat than the Washington Democrats today. But he also showed that 6 years ago, he's a very formidable candidate as a Democrat in a state that Donald Trump won by 40 points. So my guess is that Joe Manchin will just continue to be Joe Manchin. And he thinks that if he wants to run for re-election, that that's going to be good enough for him to beat any Republican that we put up anyway. Depending on what the atmosphere is in 24, we'll see.
Democrats, a sigh of relief, I'm sure.
I mean, I think Joe's got to decide whether he's going to run again,
Yeah.
right? So that's the interesting thing there. He's not going to become a Republican. He's going to continue to do what he's always done, which is speak his mind and, drive deals like the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really what a lot of Democrats ran on at the end. And so when you look at this, the whole dynamics of the Senate right now, it really, when you say you don't know what they're going to do with subpoena power, you heard what Elizabeth Warren is talking about doing, subpoenaing Jared and Ivanka to talk about the $2 billion Saudi thing. And that's a shot across the bow. If you're going to go after, Joe Biden's son in the House, maybe we ought to look at the deals that were done by Jared and Ivanka when they were in the White House.
And you may see that. Hey, Rachel, I want to go back to Georgia and Herschel Walker's loss. He did worse now in this runoff than he did in November.
Yeah, and the one thing that I was watching
You were down there.
I was down there. The one thing that I was watching for is whether or not that endorsement from Brian Kemp was going to help him in this runoff election. I mean, remember, he did worse. He underperformed where Brian Kemp was in critical districts, including around the Atlanta suburbs, where Kemp, even though if he wasn't able to win a lot of those areas outright, a lot of those counties, he was able to peel away some support, right? And Walker just wasn't able to do that. I thought it was interesting that in the final stretch, he turned toward Kemp, someone that he was never seen campaigning with leading up to November, other than Donald Trump, who literally phoned it in, held like this tele-rally. But I talked to some of those split-ticket voters that voted for Kemp and then voted for Warnock, and they said that they just felt like Walker didn't have a plan. They didn't know what he was running on. They saw him as a joke.
Do you
and that was the
think
problem.
he really wanted this? He had a pretty gracious concession speech.
He did. He said that they did give it all that they had, that they gave it a fight. I think he did. I think he felt a lot of pressure, though, from Republicans, quite frankly. And Georgia just became so critical in this election. And you had the former president behind him. You had Republicans on Capitol Hill, despite all the controversy, standing behind him. But in the end, it wasn't enough.
And Chris, you talk a lot about quality candidates, the quality of a candidate.
Bad candidates lose. Good candidates have a chance to win. And Herschel Walker was not a good candidate. And, he wasn't a good candidate because of a whole variety of issues that we saw that came out during the campaign. Let's remember a few things. Brian Kemp had 200,000 votes more than Herschel Walker on election night. If you're Herschel Walker and you don't win that night, you're not winning. I mean, Kemp's endorsement is fine, but it's the top of the ticket and getting people to stay in that line. Brian Kemp did the best he could for Herschel Walker by beating Stacey Abrams by 7. And if Herschel Walker doesn't get 50 that night, he's not getting it. And on the Donald Trump side, I mean, we all remember in 2016, he said if he got elected, there was going to be so much winning and winning and winning and winning, they'd get sick of winning. None of us knew at the time he was actually talking about the Democrats. We're going to do all that winning, not the Republicans. And that's what he's wrought. And Herschel Walker is his creation. And so he's got to own the fact that Herschel Walker so vastly underperformed in a state as we saw earlier, every other Republican running statewide won, except for Herschel Walker. You know what that tells you? Bad candidate.
Cecilia, I want to turn to the January 6th committee. You heard Adam Kinzinger talk about this a little. What are you expecting?
Well, we could be potentially looking at some criminal referrals in a matter of
You wouldn't
days.
go there?
Yeah.
No surprise there.
But I mean, there was a little bit of confusion on the Hill this past week that we will see them. We probably will see them. What our team is actually hearing is that they are looking at a number of referrals. We're looking at folks who are close to Trump. We could be talking about people like Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, looking at charges, potentially everything from obstruction to perjury. But look, at the end of the day, Martha, this could be ultimately a largely symbolic move. The DOJ doesn't have to act on charges referred by Congress. So I think it remains to be seen what actually happens with that.
And they don't have to act. But does it add pressure?
Well, I think it does, but the DOJ has not demonstrated that they're really listening. There's a ton of grassroots pressure out there, indict Trump, and they just methodically go through their work. And so a referral, yes, I think they'll be interested in the documents, interested in the interviews. You'll see a lot of kind of collaboration on the information, but a referral means nothing. It doesn't mandate anything.
I think it's worse than nothing, actually. I think a referral puts DOJ in a position of looking political.
Yeah, that's the point.
Because the committee's viewed as political. And so if they really want some of those people to be indicted, if that's what they really think needs to happen, they should trust the Attorney General to do what he thinks is right. Because the constant politicization of the Justice Department is awful for the country, and it undercuts anything that DOJ may do. Now, the Attorney General's appointed a career prosecutor to run this investigation into Donald Trump. Let him do his job. And I think Congress should just stay the hell out of it on criminal referrals. Let them write whatever report they're going to write, but criminal referrals will not put pressure on DOJ. In my view, it'll make DOJ say, we don't want to do what they asked us to do because if we do,
keep as far
we look
away from
political.
that as possible.
Yeah.
Rachel Trump's namesake company was convicted this week of tax crimes committed by two longtime executives. Donald Trump was not. So does any of this matter? It created quite a scene this week, and yet...
Yeah, I think it adds to a long list of controversies that are plaguing the former president. I mean, if we just look at the past month alone, his handpicked candidate in Georgia lost. He had dinner with a white supremacist, with an artist who has made anti-Semitic claims. He has talked about terminating parts of the United States Constitution to help him overturn an election that he clearly lost. And now this just sort of adds to that, right? I mean, I think Republicans are exhausted. I mean, I think even Republicans that like the policies, the America First policies, they're exhausted on Capitol Hill of having to respond to controversy after controversy, not focusing on what they want to be focused on leading into 2024. And I've traveled across the country. I think Republican voters are getting exhausted as well. Even the ones that voted for him, even the ones that like him, this opens up the door for them to consider someone else in 2024. And so I think we are seeing signs that it is starting to shatter a little bit of that Republican firewall for the former president.
And Cecilia, while we're on 2024, everybody better buckle up, tired or not. President Biden said he would think about running. We've heard him say that several times, but what are you hearing at the White House?
Yeah, he's now saying that he's intending to run. I think they are about to launch into full campaign mode. There's no expectation from anybody near him that he is not going to run. They're gearing up at this point. The family met over the Thanksgiving break. They're going to meet again over Christmas. We're expecting some kind of announcement after the holidays. The chief of staff says he now expects that the president will run. It'll happen after the holidays. You overheard, the first lady apparently was overheard at the state dinner telling Macron that she's all in. That was a big question. But right now, when you talk to folks around the president, they're not feeling any pressure because of Trump to launch, to go early. Yeah.
But we have a little longer to wait. I'm sure we'll all be holding our breaths. Thanks for all of you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.